Hi guys, I'm back with another book review, and this time I'm reviewing a series that has recently become my favorite. It's called H2LiftShips by Bob Freeman. Yes, the name is a mouthful, but the plot, the characters, it's amazing. And if you like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, then you should definitely check this series out. Now, I am an avid sci-fi fan and I love space adventure. Like every time I come across a book which is set in space, I have to read it because these stories set up in space have different kinds of dynamics between characters, and there's just no limit to creativity. You can come up with absolutely anything. But your story still needs to have that research to be able to back it up. And that's why I really like this series, because it's a mixture of having that understanding of space, having that understanding of technology that is required in space, but also fun, entertaining stories, hilarious characters. And the characters can be like from humans to animals to different species altogether. There's so much diversity in characters, and by that I don't mean their ethnicities, by that I mean the different kind of species that are represented in this book series. It can be quite a lot, but it's quite fun to read. We'll go into the overview of each of the books that I read, but I wanted to give you a sweeping overview of the entire saga. Some of the things to keep in mind if you're starting it is, if you are a sci-fi fan, if you like space adventure, then this series is something you might appreciate. But if you're like starting out into the genre, then I will recommend like which books to start from. This entire series, the H2LiftShips series, I started reading because the first book that I came across, it was written as a space manual, and I was like, how can you write a space manual as a fiction story, as a science fiction story, and still have it? I mean, the reviews that I read before that, they mentioned that it was entertaining, and I was like, a space manual sounds so boring. I don't know how you can make a space manual interesting. And so I read the first book, which was the H2LiftShips Volume 1, and I was so surprised. Like, the author really packs the details into that manual, and it is written like a space manual, but it is entertaining to read. And if you are like a science nerd and you love science fiction, then this is something that you will enjoy so much. I mean, different characters are still mentioned. There are so many themes that are explored within the first book itself. But I'm still surprised at the way the author was able to make a space manual entertaining. It is kind of technical and it can be too long for some people. So there were parts in between in which I felt like I would be skimming a couple of pages. But overall, I feel like even the first book was really, it explored a unique perspective and I liked the writing style. So that's why I jumped on to book 2, which I feel like that is the only book in the series that I didn't enjoy as much. So I'm like giving you that heads up. Like, if you start the series, the first book is going to be kind of overwhelming because of the language it's written in, but it's also like, it's fun to read. But the second book was kind of disappointing for me because of the standard that the first book set. I was really expecting more. The second book is more about the backstory of the different characters, and it's literally named H2LiftShips Backstory. And the second volume, if you want to understand the context in which these characters operate, or like the baggage that these different kinds of characters have, then you would want to read backstory. But if you want to just like read about the space adventures part, then I feel like you can skip part 2 as well. You can just go from first to third and fourth. The reason why I say that is because the second book is not necessarily shorter than the first book, but it felt in parts that the story was kind of dragging on. I mean, personally, I love reading like extra novellas wherever I get to find out more about the characters that I liked in the first book. But with this, it just felt like it was dragged on a bit. And I mean, I liked the stories, but it was a 3.5 out of 5-star read for me. The third book though, like, it really picked up the pace from there. And the third book in the series is called H2LiftShips Volume 3 Boson's Wave. It was so much fun. You finally get to see all these characters in action. The plot picks up, and there's so much, like, so many things that are happening all around. There are these different aliens and characters who are all in space, and they're involved in different kinds of battles itself. And actually, this book read like a Doctor Who episode, that there were different kinds of species. There are hives, and then there are algae, and there are different, like, kind of characters who are all involved in this chaotic kind of interactions with each other, and there's a full-on space war going on. It's like projected like a space opera. For me, it was more like a theatrical performance. Like, imagine if there's a Shakespeare play that's taking place in space, and that has these different kinds of, like, Doctor Who kind of vibe. That's what I got from volume 3, but it had to be one of my favorites in the series. Like, if I had to rank all the books, then I would place book number 3 at the top, and then book number 4 at second, book number 1 third, and book number 2 last. Mainly because, I mean, the book number 3 and 4, I feel like the author got a chance to, like, even after getting feedback from people, but also after setting up the base, like after giving people details about the space environment that he was creating, after giving people context of the backstories of the different characters, he really set up the base with that. But book 3 and book 4 is where he actually got to, tell the story that he wanted to tell. And it's not going to be a linear story, so be careful with that. If you're the kind of person who wants, like, oh, then A happened, and then B happened, and then C happened, and then D happened, that's not how this works. There is literally so many different threads pulling from different directions, and that's what made this book so interesting to me. Like, it is kind of complex, but you're able to follow different characters because the writing is also hilarious and entertaining, so you keep turning the page and you keep reading more and more. And I really like book 3. If I want to give you, like, details of the plot, I swear I will not be able to put it into words accurately, but let me read to you some part from the excerpt so you will get an idea. This book, it has passive aggressive families, gambling, cheating, double dealing. There is a solar sail cargo ship that travels between populated asteroids and Goldilocks core. And now Hive Mother at the helipause and the Hive Sisters are fighting. Like I'm saying, like, you need to read it to be able to understand the excitement of it. The solar sail crew of Boston's Wave, and Captain Herb, an Eastern Mountain gorilla, are fighting the algae rocket ships for control of the biogels. On one side, there are tools and weapons invented by the sentients after aeons of development. Nuclear bombs, biological weapons, and a tomato surprise. On the other hand, accumulation of brainless algae have joined with angry biogel computers, and they're calling the shots. So our protagonist, Captain Garciela, her crew, and the heliospheric navy have a battle on their hands. Sounds exciting, right? But like I said, you really have to read it to get the vibe of the entire stories. And if I'm talking about favorite characters, then I of course have to talk about book number 4, which is named H2LiftShips Boss and Wave Volume 2. And in that we get to find out more about the dynamics Captain Garciela has with her parents, and also the talking gorilla, and also all these different people who were part of the space crew. I forget the names because I've read these books a while ago, but there are so many different characters, and each of them has such unique characteristics. But I especially like the ones that were sarcastic, that were funny, that had like different kinds of sense of humor seeping into the conversations. And overall, I feel like this series, and especially book 4 as well, like book 4 has much more mature storytelling than the rest of the books. Like I mentioned, like, of course it gets better with each book, but book 4, because it's supposed to be like there is so much momentum built up from the past 3 books that it is a place where the author really got to like showcase his creativity and explore all these different directions that the story could go in. So the space crew ends up crashing their ship on Luna. They have to repair their ship. They come across space pirates. They come across alien species. They come across different kinds of groups. And like I said, the story is weaved in such a way that different plot points connect in the end, and it makes the entire journey seem so interesting. And I really liked it. This book will literally make you laugh at so many points. There was a point when I was reading this book in bed, like late at night, and I'm pretty sure my neighbors heard me laughing at like midnight or something, and they thought I was crazy because it is so hilarious. You're literally unable to control your laughter. And one thing I like about this book is that this book is appropriate for all age groups. So like even if you're pretty young or you want to read this book to your kid, that's completely appropriate. Along with space adventure and along with these like hilarious writing, there's also so much depth in the stories. The stories kind of explore different kinds of themes of camaraderie, because there is this crew of misfits and each of them has their own baggage, and each of them feel like they don't fit into the environment that they were in before. And yet when they come together, it's a beautiful story of friendship. It's a beautiful story of how people, when they come together and have different perspectives and there's this kind of diversity, they can overcome any challenge. So the actual theme of this entire series is quite inspiring. But like hands down, this has become one of my favorite sci-fi series to read, and that's why I thought I should recommend it to you. I am going to share the Amazon link of this book in the description below of all the 4 books. But like I said, if you want to get into it, be patient with book number 1. If you want to know the context and the details of the characters, then go for book number 2, but you can also skip it if you feel like that would deter you from reading the rest of the books, because book 3 and book 4 is where it gets really, really interesting. It's where it gets really, really entertaining, and I would hate for you to miss it.